The buyer says, yeah, it's non-refundable if I breach. Well, if you breach, then it would be a liquidated damage clause. So we keep coming back to liquidated damages. And the court says, that's the purpose. Liquidated damage is essentially a buyer protective clause. It can work the other way, but it mostly works to protect the buyer. So the court has said, and there was another case years ago where the parties tried to call a non-refundable deposit. They tried to call it an option. Because when you pay option money, you don't get that option money back. But they called it an option, but if you looked at what they did, it was really a deposit. They just called it an option. So the court says, you can't get around this by calling it something else. And you can't get around a liquidated damage clause by calling it something else. The law applies. Non-refundable deposits are unenforceable attempts to create liquidated damages. Good. So do it the right way, no problems. Do it the wrong way, answer to your clients. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about a couple of new forms here.
Excuse me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Liquidated damages is, but it's limited. 3%.
Okay.
So I mean, how do you know?
How do you get past the law?
How do you get past that?
Okay, the question is, isn't liquidated damage limited? And the answer is, there is a presumption in the law that the liquidated damage clause is valid on residential 1 to 4 to-be owner-occupied property if it's no more than 3% of the purchase price. Okay? So the question is, how do you get around it? And the answer is, you don't. There, was that dry enough for you?
Clarity, I like clarity.
All right, let's look at a couple of our forms here. Let me just get these forms, and if I'm allowed to, I'll take some questions afterwards, okay? Because I know you guys have other business you need to take care of. Short sale information and advisory. This form just released in November 22nd was when we released it, replaces the short sale listing addenda. So the SSL form is gone. This SSIA form is in its place. Why did we feel the need to replace it? Because our members said the short sale listing was not comprehensive enough, was not covering enough issues, was not giving the seller enough information at the time the listing was entered into. So if you take a look at this short sale information and advisory, where does it start off with? Same paragraph, basically what's a short sale, but there's that expanded paragraph too. What are some things you can do if you don't want to do a short sale? And we're trying to make it easier for a seller to understand that there are alternatives. They may not be good alternatives, but they're alternatives. Paragraph 3, you still need the lender's agreement. Paragraph 4, seller's continuing liability on the debt. Sellers, when they go into these short sales, wind up asking their real estate agents questions that the sellers should be asking their accountant or attorney. So we said, why don't we try to at least address some of those things in the documentation that you're going to give the seller? How does this deficiency apply? Remember I started off, that first law I was telling you. I said, well, guess what? You're not protected from a deficiency by doing a short sale. But in paragraph 4A2, you might be protected if it's a first trust deed holder, right? So we mentioned that.
42.
We go on to discuss a little bit about purchase money loans, trustee sale, junior liens, etc. Just to give the seller a flavor. So now maybe the seller can think about it and say, oh, maybe I really should see my accountant or my lawyer. Okay? Rather than relying on the real estate broker for advice. And we added paragraph 6, which is down at the bottom of your screen, a little bit lower. And potential improprieties, because we're seeing all sorts of bad stuff going on, so we want to let the seller know about that. And on the next page, the last paragraph, the broker authority paragraph, paragraph 9, and I want to mention this because it has in it, and really subparagraph 3, broker, what are you authorized to do? To advertise in the MLS and other medium that the property transfer, sales price, and commission are subject to lender approval, right? So if you use this form, you don't have that worry that they had at Homes versus Summer, because the seller has given you the authority to make that disclosure. Now, when the seller who refuses to sign this addendum, that's when you're questioning whether you're going to take that listing at all. But once they've signed it, they've already given you that authority. The next form, the short sale addendum form. Now, we had a short sale addendum before. We've had it since 2007. We have it now. It was amended a couple of weeks ago when we released new forms on November 22nd. And I'm going to highlight maybe 3 things here that we've changed. The first one is paragraph 1A. We start off, the agreement is contingent upon getting the short sale lender's consent, just like before. But in the previous version of this form, how long did that contingency last? And the answer was forever, or you don't know, or never. Because we said getting that approval, and then we had a blank line. And so some of you filled in a blank line. And you may have filled in 30 days, or you may have filled in 90 days, or you may have said, oh God, we're working with this lender that's terrible, so we're going to put in 3.5 years. But it was a blank line, so you never knew how long that contingency lasted if the line was left blank. And anecdotally, what we heard from our members was the line was left blank more than it was filled in. So no one knew how long the contingency lasted. So what do we do here? We put in a default, 45 days. You think 45 days is too short? Check the box and write in a different time. But if you do nothing, at least you have an answer to when the buyer can use this contingency to get out of that short sale contract. So that's the first thing we changed. Second thing is in paragraph 1C. And it says now, seller shall deliver to buyer a copy of the short sale lender's consent. And that's different from what we had before, because what we had before was the seller had to give notice of approval to the buyer. So the buyer never really saw what the short sale lender actually approved. And you know what? Sometimes sellers and listing brokers lied. And the buyer is just going along, because they had notice of approval, but they never actually saw the approval. So they didn't know whether there was really a chance that they were going to get this property or not. So the new form came out in November, says, no, buyer, you need to actually see the approval. And the third thing I'm going to point out is actually broken down into 2 sections. Right here at the bottom, paragraph 2, and then we'll switch and we'll go to paragraph 3, but let's start with paragraph 2. Which is, you enter into a short sale contract, and you've got all these time frames in the purchase agreement. When are inspections going to be conducted? How long does the buyer have to remove a loan contingency? And what does this new form say? It says, paragraph 2, time periods in the agreement for inspections, etc., shall begin the day after seller delivers buyer short sale lender's consent. And if you look a little bit further down, it says or 2, and then you can check a box that says, oh, these time frames don't begin, or these time frames begin as specified in the agreement, which means the underlying purchase agreement. When do time frames start to run in the underlying purchase agreement? Forget about a short sale. When do they start to run?
Acceptance.
From date of acceptance. Guess what? You have an acceptance even in a short sale. When the buyer and seller enter into their agreement, they sign the RPA, they sign the short sale addendum. That is acceptance. There is a contingency for lender approval, but acceptance is a lot earlier than that. Okay? So, in the old version of the short sale addendum, all the time frames started running from date of acceptance, and you had to try to find this box in the middle of the paragraph and check it if you wanted to make the time frames delayed. I remember saying, you know, buyers really don't want to start doing all of these things, spending money on inspections, appraisals, and the like, until they know the lender is approved. So we changed the default. The default is now you don't have to do anything, delayed time frames until lender approval. You can opt out of that if you want. So let's turn the page, go to paragraph 3. Similar mechanism for dealing with the buyer's deposit. General rule is you start from date of acceptance. But in the new short sale addendum, we don't start until we have lender approval. Now some people say, well, why did you separate the first time frames in paragraph 2 from the deposit time frame? Because we hear a lot of lenders will say, yeah, you can delay everything else, but we want to see a deposit in escrow. Otherwise, we'll never even get around to approving, because we won't approve anything without a deposit there. So we recognize that if we kept all the time frames lumped together and we could not distinguish deposit from those other time frames, the other contingencies, that may pose a problem with certain lenders. Okay? But our new position, everything is delayed unless you check the box. All right, let's go back to page 1, look at our agenda. Our last item will take me 1 minute. And it has to do with short sale negotiators. And why is this only going to take me 1 minute? Because really I only need to use 2 words. Be cautious. The DRE has said that short sale negotiators are performing real estate licensed activity. Therefore, they need a real estate license to engage in that service. I don't have anything against short sale negotiators per se. Remember, there's a lot of listing agents, they don't know what the heck they're doing when it comes to short sales. They'd be better off if they went to a short sale negotiator or had hired a short sale negotiator. But is it somebody who's authorized to do the work? So do they have a real estate license? Second issue, a lot of issues in short sales concerning who is paying for the short sale negotiator service. Again, be cautious. We hear an awful lot about payments being made outside of escrow without telling the lender. Those are all problems and can be deemed to be fraud in inducing the lender to accept the short sale. And if you're involved in that fraud in inducing the lender to accept the short sale, okay, you may have liability for that as well. So, is there anything inherently wrong with short sale negotiators? No. At the very minimum, make sure that they're licensed. Okay? At the very minimum, make sure everything is upfront and fully disclosed. Some people say, oh, just throw it into the HUD-1 that will get sent out, you know, the day before escrow closes and you're covered. My answer is no. You want the short sale lender's written consent to the use of and payment of, or payment to, a short sale negotiator. I think I've done my job in finishing on time.
You have.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.